So now we have Professor Ahmed El-Kholei, actually who has extensive experience in planning, development, and environmental management acquired through formal training, consultancies, and research projects. And actually, he conducted also several studies on issues related to regional planning and environmental management. He provided technical assistance in participatory, strategic, and action planning for urban and regional planning and national environmental management programs. He represented Egypt in several international conventions and meetings, and actually his contribution today with the title "A New Generation of Planners to Achieve SDG 11." So Professor El-Kholei, please.
Thank you, Dr. Hassan. Let me share my screen. Go to the presentation. Is it shared now?
Yes, but okay. If you just press this, yeah, exactly. Great.
Okay. I'll start first with the human settlements, major human settlements of the Nile Delta, and it consists, as you know, of 5 governorates: Munufiyya, Gharbiya, Kafr al-Sheikh, El-Kholei, and Dept. And we can see here on the map the major routes: the Cairo-Alexandria desert and the Cairo-Alexandria agricultural road, in addition to the Tanta, Mansoura, Dept road and the railroads here. This is the major or the urban system of the Delta region, and we can see the major cities here in terms of size, and it gets smaller and smaller, and most of those are on the routes going from Cairo to Alexandria, and that's Tanta, Mahalla, Mansoura, then Dept. And that has to do with the location of the industries here, and that's why the northern part of the Delta, it was subject for land reclamation in the early 1900s, and that explains to a certain extent the lower densities upper there. Now here is from the Google Earth, and we can see this was in 1972. That's the Delta, and you can see a lot of the virgin land over here. Now started in 1995, we can see the size of the settlements started to grow. Then here is in 2005, gets grower on the same route as we have seen. But we can also see that the agriculture land is extending towards the desert, both towards the east and towards the west. Then in 2016, that's the latest, and we can see the Delta. One of the major issues here would be the encouragement of human settlements over agricultural land. Now this is from a project with the Ministry of Agriculture and Land Reclamation in Egypt, and we can see the difference between the 1984 and 2007 and the added lands. And here's the key to these maps. You can see also the shrinking areas of the lakes and wetlands, which is a major environmental loss, as well as you can see the size of Cairo and its extension towards the desert, as well towards the north, part of the Qalyubiyya governorate, which is not part of the Delta, but still it is part of the predicament in Egypt. Now, this is the type of the development, and you can see here are the gaps of the agricultural land. And you can see here, this is the development along the parcels of agricultural land and the canals. See? Now, this is the Nile Delta Human Deprivation Index that I calculated with the support of one of my graduate students, Ahmed Shalabi. And the Human Deprivation Index is an index based on 3 measures: the expectancy to live past 40 years old, social services, and education. And then we did it using all the administrative units within the 5 governorates, cities, and villages. The darker that it gets, like here, we have 30% or more of the population living in deprivation. While the ones with the lighter color here, if you can see, let me, here. Here, you can see this. These are the areas with the less deprivation, which means there is kind of an association between the economic base as well as the deprivation. The more you have a diverse economic base, the less you're expected to have human deprivation. Okay. And this is based on the study of the Minister of Agriculture, and they're comparing in Egypt at large, the cultivated land in the Nile Delta and Valley have increased from 7.1 million faddan to 8.5 million in 2007, adding 1.4. Now, these 1.4 are the areas that you have seen on the eastern and western side of the hinterlands of the Delta. The land under reclamation is 332,000 at that time. That two main constraints here in terms of the land reclamation, and the first would be the energy needed as well as the water for reclaiming the land. These 1.4 million faddans will not have the same productivity as those of the Delta, because on the Delta, the peasants can cultivate one or more than 1 or 2 cycles per year. Sifi, Shitwi, Nili, and so on. Here, it is not the case because of the retainment of the land, the soil itself. The area land cultivated under reclamation has also increased. Now we see that the human settlements, cities and villages also have increased. But the growth here is almost 50%. Now we go to the roads to serve those settlements have also increased. By the area, the percent of agriculture use has increased. And at the same time, the data from CAPMAS, the Central Agency for Public Mobilization, shows the decline in the number of people employed in the agriculture sector. Here, that's in the Delta, and we can see that the Delta has lost land, cultivated land, and that loss was for agriculture, for encouragement of human settlements. Now, they zoom into these units: Huesna, Minufia, Qalyub, Qalyubiyya, Khanka, Qalyubiyya, Shubra al-Khim. And these 3, the latest 3 are part of the Greater Cairo region. However, for them, it's part of the agricultural land. And you can see here, all of them have gained in terms of human settlements, and the most gain was in the Greater Cairo region. Okay, compared here 15% to 36%, from 4% to 13.4% in Huesna. Now, the status of the rural, the land resources in the Delta can be categorized as desertification. In terms of salinity of soil resources, will affect its ability to maintain the current yield. Urban, you would hear it from the peasants that الأرض ما عادتش تجيب زي زمان. We add to that urban encouragement and soil scrapping. Over and above, pollution of both soil and water resources, mismanagement of soil and water resources, sand encouragement on the fringe areas, as well as the shoreline and erosion. That's very clear when we go to the northern areas of the El-Kholei and Kafr Sheikh. Now, the institutional framework that is responsible for land uses in Egypt, we have two types of lands. The first is the old land, which is the Nile Valley and the Delta, and the local administrations are responsible for that, in addition to another 2 kilometers outside into the desert. That's according to the legislation. And as mentioned earlier, that the local administrations, they have their own problems, and we'll not go into that. Now, the new desert land, most of it is under the control of the armed forces. What is left from them is given to the Authority for Land Reclamation, which is part of the Ministry of Agriculture and Land Reclamation, Tourism Development Authority, the Authority for New Communities, that's for the Grade 6 land, الرتبة الثابتة. Industrial Development Authority, it's for the mining, and then local administrative outside the 2 kilometers, as I mentioned.
Ooh.
Yeah, Doctor. Okay. Next, here we can see from the map, that's an intense study on Menofia to see the generation of waste. Ahmed went into these 73 units, collected bags from the waste of each unit, weighted the bag, and then sorted and recorded the weight and sorted according to the Egyptian code to link the deprivation with the consumption as a measure. And we are using now municipal solid waste as a proxy to measure income distribution. And you can see here the areas that's near the Cairo Alexander Agricultural Road has the highest generation of waste per capita daily, while the areas away from it, like here in Minouf, that has the lightest color, is the least amount, which shows the size of the consumption as well as the income, disposable income for the families. One qualitative aspect that we have witnessed in the data that we collected from the field, that you can see that most of these areas, that is more vegetarian waste, not organic in terms of feathers, bones, and stuff like this. While the areas here in near Wisna, you can see fast food bags and cans and glass and stuff like that. Now, our other example here is Tanta, and this is the historical development of Tanta, which started just a village here, then extended outside into the northern side to include Hafa, another village, and now it's moving towards Sibir Bay and to other 2 villages, Kafr Assam, over here. The reason it's going into this direction, that the railway served as an edge. Once it started to link, there are links to the other side across the bridge, that the development started to move this way. Like you can see that Tanta had another one of those. This is Ring Road, was developed as an alternative for not going through the city. Now there is a new one that's going outside, in addition to another road that goes from outside Tanta to Kafr Sheikh instead of this old road that goes from here. All of this will mean one simple thing, that the extension of human settlements over agricultural land will continue. Now, these are the land prices we collected from the realtors in Tanta. And we can see that the prices of land here, which is the most expensive, around Sayyid al-Badawi Mosque and the railway station, at that time went for 1 square meter to 85,000 Egyptian pounds. And the prices went lower when you go into the rural areas outside Tanta. But the other thing that was really amazing is to find that the densities here are lower, the heights of the buildings are lower, while the densities and the height of buildings start to pick and rise on the way to Mahalla and on this way across the Cairo-Alexandria road. And we can see here, for example, this is what Shara al-Gish, or what they know as Shara al-Bahr. And you can see if we go away from here, from Sayyid al-Badawi, all the way to the stadium, you can see that the prices are declining, while the population densities are peaking at the road, the highway, while declining once more. Now here, this is El-Kholei road, which goes from the downtown of Tanta into the direction here, this way. And you can see dropping in the prices and up, while the densities here increase, which means one thing, that the decision made for planning Tanta had affected the mechanisms of the market. The market is working perfectly, but because the interventions didn't consider properly the market mechanism, we are having this contradictory situation, which really negates the theories of urban economics. So we have another issue in the Delta, which is the holdings, the hiyazat, tend to be very small and fragmented. And the reason are of twofold. First, mostly are accessed through the land complex mechanism to assure tenure. The second is the Islamic inheritance rules tend to subdivide the land and the holdings. So complicated procedures to secure property rights is a major issue, because most of the holdings in the Delta are informal. It's not formal. Holding does not mean you own it. That's a major issue. الحيازة شيء والملكية شيء تاني خالص. الملكية means you can sell it on the market. حيازة means you are not, you own it, you hold it, but you don't have the right to sell it on the market. And so most of this turns to be a dead capital, رأس مال ميت, which you cannot use it into the development, you cannot get credit for it. There is a legal difference between holding the parcel of the land and ownership. So the consequence first is persistent rural poverty. هيبقى عندك فقر مستمر. وبعدين هيبقى عندك violent disputes، خناقات بقى على الحدود ما بين الناس والورث والحاجات دي كلها، والنتيجة طبعا informality. I'm sorry that I switched. Now, the Islamic rule law recognizes the protection of property rights. Land ownership must be fair and in accord with overall social responsibility. The Quran stresses the issue of accountability, especially against the misuse of power and corruption. Waqf was a significant legal mechanism and a key Islamic institution, but unfortunately, since I would say the early 1960s, when it was part of the socialist reforms, the Waqf and the cooperatives, all of that were turned into state property, and centralization put an end to Awqaf as an idea. I mean, if you go to Turkey, go to Singapore, you can see Malaysia, you can see the idea how it is really implemented and how it is working towards social development at large. In Egypt, the process of legislation is complicated, and we have a cluster of laws and regulations. One of them, a cluster is about urban development, the management of unit settlements. Another is about defining land uses. Another set is about the desert land, road, public squares, and built environment, property taxes, public notary, التسجيل والإشارة العقاري, registering a property. All of those laws, decrees affect the process of the mechanism of the market. Now we add to this that we have another issue. It's about the sea level rise. That sea level rise is an outcome of climate change. And as you can see here in 2004, that was the status. Now, according to the UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, circulation models, and they think here, if the sea level rise increased by 50 centimeters, parts like Alexandria will not be there. And another parts here in northern Delta, as well as here, Port Said and Damiat will be immersed and inundated. Now, 1 meter rise, that's the expected scenario. Let me tell you now that the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, have scenarios all the way that these sea level rise will go all the way to 5 meters high. The Delta has another problem. It's because of it is created over years by the Nile flooding from Ethiopia and throwing the mud and silt here. So the Delta was formed. And because of its nature, the Delta could be going down in its levels. It's losing altitude. So major issues we have in front of us and in front of the planners in Egypt is deteriorating land efficiency in terms of classification of land resources, deteriorating efficiency, increased fragmentation of agricultural land. You cannot make any use of economies of scale. You have a serious issue with technical and institutional capacities in terms of managing natural resources. You have another major issue about the freshwater resources, because if you cannot cultivate rice in the northern areas of the Delta, the salt intrusion will increase, affecting the groundwater, which is the major resource of irrigation of the newly developed land towards the west and the east. Energy security and reliable energy, that's another issue that has to be taken into consideration. Now, we go to SDG 11, which in my opinion, it is the icing on the cake for the SDGs, because every SDG starts from 0 and ends at 11. Because the city is the interplay of the economic, social, environmental interactions. And that's why SDG is at the top, in my opinion. It's not biased. So these are the targets here of the SDG. And let me pose the questions. What planners do? We have to redefine the planner, the role of the planner, the need to organize the profession, and at last, there's a need for planning education. According to the latest report from the World Economic Forum, in 2025, the top 10 skills come into 4 categories: problem solving, self-management, working with people, technology use and development. And these 4 skills are of utmost importance for anyone who wants to be a planner. He or she has to think analytically and to be innovative, has to be an active learning and to know the learning strategies, have to master complex problem solving, have critical thinking abilities, creative and originality, leadership skills, social influence, technology use, monitoring and control, technology design and programming. Resilience, that's very important now because it's one of the targets of the SDG 11 is to have a resilient human settlement, reasoning and problem solving. Accordingly, I think planners of tomorrow in the era of the Industry 4.0, they should be able to plan for sustainable and smart city, requiring new skills. These new skills, first is technical competencies for analytical actions. These are rooted into natural sciences such as biology, chemistry, and the like. They must possess intersubjective competencies for communicative actions, and they have to draw this from hermeneutic knowledge, such as economics, sociology, political science, and the like. Last but not least, they must master critical ethical competencies. Planners used in the past, and still a lot of them, they think they know what people want. And they, instead of working for the people, you have to work with the people, which is a different issue. And that's why, in my opinion, participation is the beginning, but it has to go into more like enabling and last to enable the people to take charge of their destiny. Otherwise, their future is not sustainable. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Professor El-Kholei, for this broad overview, starting from the Delta and reaching SDGs, and your recommendations for the capacities needed for the graduates working as planners. And yeah, I think maybe I just pin out a couple of keywords maybe that can help and lead the discussion until we have some questions from, okay, there's one comment, wonderful presentation, thank you. And then, yeah, okay. So before getting this question from Mukhtar, I would just highlight the historical development that you mentioned as important to study and understand the situation. The human deprivation index for Delta, which I think is also very, very indicative and can really help and support the planning process in this area of Delta. And you mentioned also something in Arabic, الأرض ما عادتش تجيب زي زمان. I think it's also very crucial statement, which means the land, or the agricultural land, is not giving enough reward as before, as it used before, which is actually changing the mindset of the farmers, and can also be good justification for the change of the land use to be used for building construction.
That's true, and in my opinion, if you look at it from a hermeneutic point of view, it's an indication that they have felt that agricultural production is not sustainable. That's the real definition of intergenerational discontinuity.
Yeah, yeah.
That doesn't yield what it used to. However, I will tell you that the same peasant who is making that claim, he's also responsible because he keeps digging the environment because he wants to escape poverty. And that goes back to the policies and the plans of the government. Because the government, in my opinion, should not should reconsider the issue of subsidies, to whom you're subsidizing and how you subsidize. See, it's not an urban rural development and architecture and stuff. It is an economic political. How much of the money you're allocating for subsidies and to whom you are subsidizing. Like, for example, those developments in Eastern Cairo about the flyovers and all that. How many people in Cairo really own a car?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the issue.
Okay. I think we have a couple of questions from several scholars, but I would say maybe we can postpone the discussion after the three coming presentations. Would you agree, Dr. El-Kholei? Are you continuing with us this session?
I'll tell you something. It is now Al-Asr here in Bahrain.
Okay.
So in 4 hours, Maghrib will be here, and it will be dark. So if you don't mind, I would like you to let me.
Okay, there's one question from Mukhtar. Mukhtar, can you please say, like, you have 4 questions. Can you choose one, please?
Okay. No. Okay, it's just 2 questions. So one about the availability of mapping data for current urban situation for Delta cities, as the most of the changes is from 87 to 2007. And I think nowadays there is a real difference from these dates, and the human settlement is already doubled or more, and is more worse than 207. That's the first question about the data. And the other question is the strategies, the development strategies for the Delta old cities, as nowadays I think the government needs to stop building in old cities and with high limitation in building. And they are trying to moving citizens away to new development area like Mansoura, New Mansoura, which is also not affordable to many local citizens and not suitable for their social or economic life. So what's your opinion about that?
First, let me tell you something. The data I was able to, that was part of a project I worked on with the Minister of Agriculture and the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. That's why I had the data available for me to do this, that exercise. I think the data is there. The problem is to access it. So that's your first question. Second question about the Mansoura. I agree with you. The Mansoura, the new Mansoura, I've seen the plans posted on هيئة المجتمعات العمرانية الجديدة, the website, and I agree with you. It's not affordable. And if you want people to move, they will move because they will find a job opportunity. What are the job opportunities in the new Mansoura? It says new universities and schools and stuff like this, factories or something. I'm not comfortable with such thing, given that I didn't see that they had any environmental impact assessment for such a project. To tell you the truth, many projects in that the government starts do not have environmental impact assessment. Let me remind you about the landfill of Alexandria in Burj Al Arab, when they did it several years ago, and then most of the people at the resorts of the North Coast were complaining about the flies several years ago. That's because the landfill was done without a proper environmental impact assessment. So I hope that answers your question. Okay.
Okay. There is one comment from Marwan from TU Berlin. I wanted to ask about the date of Tanta land market map.
That was a dissertation defended in 2015.
Okay. Comment from Hamdi. You have a comment? Short one, please.
Yeah, short one. I think it's all coming from the loopholes in the regionalization, because if we are talking about land tenure or ownership conflicts in Egypt, it's all comes from the loopholes in the urban laws. Then our rule as planners, then to introduce new urban laws. That is because if you are talking about the agricultural land and how we can, there is encroachment in the agricultural land, the nature of the law itself, it has a lot of loopholes that you can take the agricultural land or take the desert land from the state, and then you can later legalize it and then have it in your own. So I think it's all coming from the legislation side.
I agree with you, but I'll tell you something. In 1997, I worked with Hernando de Soto. I was one of the team that worked with him on the informal real estate in Egypt. Hernando de Soto is the author of the Mystery of Capital, and he has this what they call the Institute for Liberty and Democracy. He used to work for the World Bank, and he thinks that his argument is that if we have to revive the debt capital in terms of unregistered real estate, that will affect the economy because you are mainstreaming or reviving that capital. Theoretically, that's true. One of the things that we found to get a title for a piece of land in the desert, you have to go into 271 different steps with different organizations. And that will take 14 years. Now, that's an impediment for attracting investments. No investor will come and spend his or her life and the money going into loops to try to get a parcel of land. Okay, that's one thing. Second, which I would like just to bring to your attention, we are planners, we are not responsible for rewriting the laws or introducing them, because the cycle starts by the government, okay, and the government sends a bill to the Majlis al-Nawab.
The parliament, yeah.
Goes to Majlis al-Dawla to check whether it is okay or not, and then they send it, then they discuss it and they approve it, then it's sent it to the president to sign. Then one day, there will be a lawyer and will check on one of those articles and say that this is against the constitution, and goes to the constitutional law, and then the law is annulled. While at the same time, people are applying the law and going against the old norms. That's the problem about legalizing, and that's what I said here in my presentation. It's complex and compound, and you don't know for whose, يعني لمصلحة مين. I don't want to point fingers here, but it is there, and you have to. Now, what I'm saying here, try to live and work with whatever is given there. Okay, ما تخبطش دماغك الحيط مع الناس دي.
Okay. Because I work in Asmat, so it is somehow there is a lot of conflicts in if you are doing the development plan of informal settlements and you want to relocate them to Las Marat or wherever they are, then there's a lot of loopholes in the law, and then there's a lot of people who they are not living even in informal settlements, and there is. I
agree, and if you read or listen to the officials, you feel that they don't live with us. It's a government, let me say, it's a government with head up in the sky and hands down in our pockets.
But then what I'm talking about,
I think Hamdi, sorry.
No, it's a final comment. The urban planners, they are involved. Maybe they will suggest, and then the politic people or wherever they are.
Hamdi, my first bullet was what planners do.
Exactly. I think here maybe
there's a thin line.
Maybe planners
being a planner and being a politician.
Yes, but maybe planners and academics can here interfere or play the role of mediator and like inform, do the studies, do the recommendations, and yeah, I think sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So
and that's why we have the third competence, the critical ethical.
yeah.
See what I mean?
Yeah, and there is a comment also from Dr. Heba Sliman from Kafr Sheikh University. The conclusion for education needing skills really very important. Thanks, Dr. Ahmed. From Tanta, this is the most interesting and useful lecture for me today. Thanks a lot, Dr. Ahmed. So